Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. In previous episodes of the Communication Accelerator, we've been discussing representation and science communication, two critical topics that will affect the future of water. And those very engaging conversations are available now on the World Water Week online platform, and I highly encourage you to see those fantastic discussions. But today we're going to discuss how to build resilience against misinformation and why it's so important to prioritise if we're going to secure the water debate against fake news and bad actors. My name is Malcolm Larry. I'll be your host and moderator for today's session, and I'd like to warmly and sincerely thank the Grundfos Foundation for their support of the Accelerator program and making today's discussion possible. Joining me today on the panel, we have James Ogutu, who's a water, sanitation and hygiene specialist at Practical Action. Also joining us on the panel is Kim Skivstel, so my apologies, Executive Director of the Grundfos Foundation. And opening today's panel will be a short keynote from Martina Klimes, who is an advisor on water and peace at the Stockholm International Water Institute. So warm welcome to all the panelists, and Martina, if you're ready for your presentation, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Malcolm, and thank you very much for having me here and for being open to discuss this important topic. I would like to ask you, how many of you have been in a situation when you maybe are joining a Facebook discussion, discussing under a post, and you know that what you are sharing, that is really science, is science-based facts, but the other people, maybe your friends, your family, your co-workers, they say, I don't believe in science, I don't believe the facts. And this is a reason why we need to talk about building resilience against different information influence campaigns. It's not about responding to every misinformation. It is really about us as a society to becoming more resilient. And here are just some examples of these. And you can see that usually misinformation are very simple. They present a very simple and clear message. There is no really a room for any further discussion. It's not really presenting a very complex topic. And it's usually very, very tailored to a particular audience. And here, during my short keynote, I would like to show you how this disinformation chain, how does it happen? How are these information designed? So first, those who work with creating this content analyze the environment. Think, who is my target audience and why I need to influence this group of people. And if you think about Brexit, some different elections, if you think about the pandemic and vaccination, we witnessed so many different types of disinformation and misinformation campaigns. But now we are really standing against existential crisis. We talk about us having to really find responses to climate change. We have to change our behavior. And we are also facing uphill battle against all these different disinformation campaigns. So first, in the recon part, is that when we really analyze the audience, if now we are the ones who are creating misinformation, then we go to the part when we build it, we prepare the environment. We maybe think, is there increased unemployment in a particular area? Maybe that is a good time to now talking about the climate mitigation and adaptation will really cause jobs. So now that's a good opportunity. So this is when we are building the environment. And after that, when we move to the seed part, when we launch the campaign, we design the content. And here I need to stress that we are not doing any research. We are only creating the content for communication. So if you compare to the work that scientists do, and you think of starting with an idea, then preparing research project, getting funding, then committing to research, and then later presenting results. On the other side, on the misinformation side or disinformation, it's actually only the part about the communication that is everything that they need. They don't really need to do extensive content research. So in the seed part, we are then designing the content. They are selecting initial drop points. When is the right time for sharing a particular information? And then we go to the copy part. When we say we fertilize, we share initial article, and then we reshare the original post. So we created this content that's tailored to a particular audience. We shared it. And then now comes a very important part, and here many people may be unknowingly contributing. And here I would also like to stress the difference between disinformation, misinformation. We also have fake news. We have many other types of this content. But this is when we amplify it, and that is when people who do not know that this is a particularly designed item, that they share it. It may be your friends who see it online and who say, yeah, this really makes sense, this is very clear, this really speaks to me, and they repost it. So then this content is shared by real, unique people. When we studied the disinformation rhetoric, we would call them, I quote, useful idiots, the ones who are really sharing this and who really believe it. And the reason why it's so easy to believe it for them, because it's designed for them. It's really speaking to a particular situation, and it's really addressing the daily challenges that they face, because it's a very smart communication campaign. And then we get to the part when we are amplifying the message. So we have authentic voices, we have real people that are sharing this message. I can tell you that the research says that, for example, before the COP conference in Katowice, 30% of all tweets about the conference were created by bots. And then that's artificial intelligence. And then they were later shared by real people. And then we move to the control part, when we can really, because we designed this chain, we know how to manipulate it, we can really control the message, and we can further tailor it to the responses, and we can really monitor what kind of response we are getting. And then in the end, we reach the effect when we harvest, and that means that people come to conclusion, there is no truth. I cannot trust anything, I cannot trust science. And this is a very dangerous part. So what we need to do in the solutions, we need to eliminate the part in which disinformation and misinformation thrives. Disinformation is specially designed content that is really designed for you to not believe science. And misinformation, when it's skewed in a particular way, may be shared in the wrong context. We also have fake news. We use different types of technology. We have deep fakes when whole videos were altered. And just my final slide, if you imagine that on the disinformation side, it's only this, it's only very smart communication campaign. But on the research side, we have to really conduct very complex studies on the effects of climate change, how they affect people, environment, industries, different sectors. We have to work with very complex data science. We have to find the right data. And then we also have to work with the politics. How do we really talk to the decision makers about these problems? How do we get the governments to back these processes? And then it's also the communication. So it's very important to invest in communication. It's essential. If we are scientists who are working on very complex issues and we do not include the communication part, then we cannot really win this very complex battle. And now I would like to end my short keynote with a question to my fellow panelists. So now I talk about the importance of resilience. What do you think is the most important we can do to increase our resilience against fake news and disinformation?
Good question. Please take a seat and let's jump into it. So James, what is the most important thing we can do to increase resilience against fake news and disinformation?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, social media platform is no doubt a game changer in terms of insofar as information dissemination is concerned. And with that opportunity comes responsibility. And to answer your question, I think we need to make deliberate efforts to invest adequately on digital access platform, so that the users of this information, the communities, are able to, within themselves, build scrutiny. And therefore, with that scrutiny, then they'll be able to really have that responsible use of social media, because it's a platform that is already, everybody has an access to. And that will be very key in terms of, responsible use, in terms of discerning the right information that they have, and thereby, ensuring that whatever they get, from the communicators, from the development actors, then is the right information. And number two, also making use of the community influencers. There are community leaders that we've always had, the communities, and many a times the community members believe in what they do. The community members feel to be associated, with their acts, with their actions, and therefore, if we engage these community influencers, it could be church leaders, it could be, just community-owned resource persons in these communities, then I think they will want to be associated with the information that they get. And in that way, they'll feel that that information will be okay. And I think in a way, resilience will be strengthened in terms of miscommunication.
So specific digital platforms and leveraging the loyalty and trust of local influencers. Really interesting. Kim, your thoughts, please.
Well, that's really the main reason why the Grundfos Foundation is also supporting the Accelerator Communication program here at the World Water Week, is to broaden out the knowledge that we hear here at the World Water Week, so that others can use that knowledge to communicate to, citizens around the world. Because the water issue, as we all know here at the World Water Week, is the most interesting but also challenging task we have in the world right now. It's directly linked to the climate crisis. We need political action. There's a lot of corporations, foundations, NGOs, academia working with water, but we also are nodding to each other all the time saying, it's very depressing. And we're doomed, Mr. John Cherry said earlier today. So maybe if we try to communicate this knowledge and also focus on how can we deal with this, mobilizing, organizing, getting academia a bit more on board, instead of publishing your scientific results in peer reviews, maybe also go on social channels to tell people around what to do about it. So it's really communicating against misinformation, because I don't believe 1 second that people are stupid. Maybe President Trump thinks so. And has apparently, former president, hopefully never future president again, but he has this odd view that people want to be misled, and people like to believe in lies. Yes, because it's easy and it's also very entertaining. But facts, database facts, and also a grown-up discussion also on social channels about politics is something that we should try to strive for. And that's where academia, corporations, NGOs should join forces and communicate strong messages. And maybe sometimes communicate not like Donald Trump, but somehow still use some of the same methods, trying to get the headlines right, some more punchlines, because you can make punchlines on data-based things just as you can do punchlines about lies. So I think we need to go on sometimes on the same level, especially when it comes to political action regarding water.
Tina?
I would say that we said that we need political will, and for political will we need public support. And to really galvanize public support, we need to educate the public about the different threat from these miscommunication campaigns. So it starts with education. And at the same time, we also need to invest in a robust communication component of research projects. Communication should not be only something sharing your article at the end. It should really be thinking, how do I communicate my research findings to general public? How do I really tailor these key messages? It's not only about sharing the executive summary or abstract of your academic article, because that is really quite complex. It's really about working with communication professionals and investing in this.
So following up from that, if we want to get it across to a wide audience, on very complex issues about water and climate change, we know that facts are not enough. I mean, yep, Trump's proved that, as you brought up, Mr. Trump. But how do we ensure that science-based information is accessible and easy to digest for the general public? Kim, would you like to kick off this one?
That's not easy, because it's also I'm not going to offend anyone when I'm saying this, hopefully. There's a lot of scientists in the room as well, but it's really also to try and get out of this bubble of that we're in a bubble with people that we trust, that are just as clever as we are, and scientists sometimes has a tendency not to move in the circles where common people are. And they should, because what they're doing is good for humanity, and what their results are and their knowledge can move people. So in communication, I'm also a former communicator myself. You have to speak to people's minds, but also to people's hearts.
Absolutely.
And I think scientists, universities, NGOs, corporations, so on, should think along these ways. And we do that in the Grundfos Foundation. We have a lot of exciting projects around the world. Now we are setting aside in our grants money specifically to tell the story about the project and ask our fellow partners to tell the story seen from their perspective, so we don't just tell it ourselves. And that's a way of hopefully getting the message out there. Instead of just making a project and everything's fine, it could even inspire others to make the same projects.
Thank you. Again, there's no direct approach to it. And for me, a couple of things. If you look at the community that we work in, many a times we've got data that we get from the communities, from our continuous research, real-time data that we do, and many a times it comes with jargons, with complex language that sometimes it becomes very difficult for the communities to understand. So I think one approach will be to ensure that we tone down on the language. We communicate it in a language that the communities are able to understand, the communities are able to digest, and be able to link with what is within their setup. So that is one that is going to be very, very key. Number two, again, as actors or as change agents, many a times we begin to get information at the initial stages, what we'll call the baseline stage. And sometimes we forget to involve the communities at this stage and walk along with them this journey. To an extent that sometimes when you are doing your midterm evaluation or maybe end-term evaluation, that's the time that you feel that you want to involve the community. What we are doing in our experience in Northern Kenya that Grundfos Foundation is supporting is working with the community from the initial stages, taking a step back and looking at to what extent are we involving the community. When you're talking about baseline data, to what extent is the community involved in just trying to appreciate the current situation that they're having, so that by the time you are looking at midterm evaluation findings and what impacts the project has created, then the communities begin to understand and they know that look, this is where we are like 3 years ago, and over time this is where we've reached. That way the communities begin to understand that information because you involve them in the initial stages.
And connecting that information to the outcome for the community as well, so that they realize, oh, this actually means this for me. What do you think about this?
I would say work with communication professionals. See them really as your equals. And this I'm saying that sometimes scientists tend to see that this is just some kind of support system. But no, this is very, very important part of our work. So really think of, you mentioned Mr. Trump, but many other politicians who invested in communication, very robust and very good communication system, went very far with very weak agenda. So we should think in a similar way.
James, I have a two-part question for you. You're working closely with communities in Kenya. What are the greatest challenges when communicating science-based information to those communities? And secondly, how can we make sure experiences in places like Kenya, which are often forgotten by the world media, reaches a global audience?
Thank you. Yes, in my experience, especially working in Northern Kenya, information dissemination is really key. And information communication can only be said to be effective, if it reaches the intended audience and the audience, really have an understanding of that information. So a couple of challenges. One, I will look at it from the time, in terms of cultural barriers. Cultural bias that then now really make the communities to really have, misaligned perceptions about information, so that the time that you are trying to disseminate or to share learning from your ongoing projects, then already the community have got that, perceived mind based on, those cultural barriers and cultural values that they have. And therefore, however much you want to give information to them, they already know what is already there. For instance, a very interesting case has always been in terms of, making water safe, for consumption, potable water for drinking and for human use. There are this perception that, water already, from the beginning, water is safe. That, again, the perception of the community. So, however much you bring on, the efforts of trying to, point of use water treatment, and all such things, the communities feel, some of them really feel that, water is already safe, from the beginning, and then what is it that we need to do? So in a way, they're looking at like more, in a way, you're trying to make water impure. So it needs to be in its natural state. So again, based on those perceptions that they have in the community. Number two, again, a challenge that has always been, again, already I alluded to, was the language that we use, the language barrier. Sometimes there's so much science, data that we want to bring to the community from our mining and all that. So you want to begin sharing with them the methodology that you use and all that. But I think, so the challenge becomes when, the language that you want to use to disseminate this information is a language that, the communities really don't understand. For the communities, they like it to be, keeping it simple.
Simple. And relatable. Relatable to their challenges in their life.
And very straightforward to the community. So again, that's some of the challenges that we see in working with this community. And number three, it has to be in terms of, the platforms that are available to share this information. Sometimes there's so much that we get, but we tend not to really close that communication loop.
Right.
And so you involve the communities, you give them the information, but there's not that loop that is created. And therefore, at the end of the day, not so much goes to the communities. You remain with you as, as the person who was doing this evaluation or maybe implementing this project. So again, failure, by the development actors, failure by the change agents to be able to close, the loop, so that it's made to be effective.
Kim, I have a question for you. Thank you for your answer, James. Kim, the World Water Week Communications Initiative and the Communications Accelerator, supported by Grundfos Foundation, we're very grateful for that. Why do we need more fact-based communication about water right now? Why is it critical?
We know about the facts. We know that we are looking into I'm not going to say doomsday, but we have huge problems ahead. So it's really to inspire others to get the message out there that we need to come up with solutions. And governments, corporations, NGOs, but also every single person on this planet has a responsibility to adapt to that situation and behave responsibly. So it's really trying to get the message from Stockholm broadened out. And I think it's 250 communicators or journalists attached to this World Water Week, which is fantastic. Several from some the developing countries. And we need to get the message out there that the problems are there, but the solutions are also there. And we need to rely on new technologies. We need to rely on new ways of working together. But the main message is really trying to be responsible. And one of the things, how to be responsible, also when I talk to people about why we are funding a lot of water projects around the world, it has to do with life. Nothing else.
Yep.
And if we have safe water, access for all, then we can create life. We can get jobs. We can get agriculture on its feet again. We can create a better world. But if you just talk about supporting developing countries when it comes to, and that's also very important, human rights, political action in so many other ways is very, very important. But the basic is, if you don't have the water there, then you don't have democracy, you don't have human rights, you have nothing. So if we can, in some of the projects, when we put in safe water, people get healthier, then they get more energy, then they are getting curious, then they're asking questions, then they're becoming wiser, and one day, they'll claim their right to be a part of society, voting for the parliament, and maybe even become a member of the parliament. My dream is maybe in some of the refugee settlements where we are supporting with fresh water, one day one of the people living there becomes president in a country and remembers how come you were successful, because you had the access to clean water. Make sure that everyone gets that.
Fantastic answer. So I've got 2 more questions to go, and we've only got a few minutes left, so I'd like 30-second answers for both these questions. So the first question is, let's talk about the importance of putting resources into communication to counter misinformation. How should this be done? What is the focus point, Martina?
I think we should realize that this is actually a security issue, because misinformation and disinformation are really limiting our space in which we can find solutions. So treat it as a very serious issue, also the communication part, and put resources at different levels, not only into research, but also at different communities levels and also on the national level.
I think it's about igniting selected groups in society. We are also supporting C40. And as you know, that when cities move, nations move. That's why we're supporting the water track in C40. That's one thing. So also igniting some of the decision makers and powerful people that can influence others. And then a final thing, that's really about communication. It's very easy. If someone else in the room shouts at you, do not leave the room, but do not whisper either. Shout back.
What would you say? Where should we focus the resources? 30-second answer.
It's often said that if it is not reported, then probably it was never done. And in terms of focus on resources, even before you begin to focus on resources, I think we need to begin to talk about, do we have a communication plan, in our projects? Because many times we talk about procurement plans, we talk about financial plans, we talk about M&D, monitoring, evaluation, and learning plans, but we forget to have in place, a clearly defined communication plan. So you begin by having a communication plan for you to be able to put resources into that plan, to be able to really actualize that plan. So I think it's about having a communication plan that can now be followed up, that can be used, to really look at how we communicate the information that we are getting from the communities. In our work in northern Kenya, the communication plans are really working out, because now you are able to follow up in terms of what was I supposed to do, at the baseline stage.
Yep.
What was supposed to be my role, during the midterm, and from this information, are we really using it to inform learning?
Big focus on accountability, getting things done, following through.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So final question, 30-second answers. Looking forward, what would be your one recommendation that you know works, that can reach out with your message that we can scale? What is your one recommendation, that you know that works, that allows us to scale communication and messaging? Martin.
Work with opinion leaders, community leaders, and those who really have the trust of people, and bring them on board to really share these important messages. So work also with influencers, but really think about it. Who is the right person to share these important messages? Who has the audience?
Use the data, use the facts to reach the minds of people, but also use emotion, the good stories, the fantastic results to move their hearts.
Intersectorial collaboration will be a game changer. Involvement of all the WASH actors in this to come up with, a knowledge product that then we can be able to communicate to the communities, so that everybody speak, we look at it from the same script, so that all the actors, in this sector, in the WASH sector, speak from the same script and are able to have, a knowledge product that then we can communicate to the communities, and the communities will listen to that knowledge product. Thank you.
Fantastic answers from all of you. We could talk about this all day, but unfortunately we're out of time. James, Kim, Martina, thank you so much for your time today. And once again, we extend our sincere thanks to the Grundfos Foundation for making today possible. And thank you for your participation in World Water Week 2022.